So you've worked hard on your presentation, and now the big day has arrived. You are about to present to your audience. Now, there's some things you should know about running your slideshow. There's so many options to choose from, and it all depends on who your audience is and what the venue is. So we get to these options by clicking the slideshow menu and set up show. Now, this dialog box offers a number of options, and we'll just go through them briefly, discussing what they mean. In this first section called Show Type, we need to decide if this presentation is being presented by a speaker, in which case you're going to see your presentation in the full screen view. Perhaps you're sending this presentation to someone who's going to view it by themselves as an individual. Well, by selecting Browsed by an Individual window, what you get is exactly that, a window on their screen where they can see other things at the same time, just not a full screen view. This allows them to use a scroll bar to get up and down, left and right. Another option is to be browsed at a kiosk, and if you've ever seen any of these screens running, usually you don't have access to the keyboard or the CPU, but you've got this screen that's running a looping slideshow. Well, this is where you'd select that option right here, browsed at a kiosk, and it will be a full screen view. Now over here on the right, we've got the Show Slides section, and by default, we will show all of the slides in a presentation. If we wanted to customize this somehow and just show certain slides, like for example the first 8, we'd choose the From field and choose 1, and in this case we choose 8. And perhaps the rest of the slides don't matter in this kiosk view. Another option is to set up a different version or a custom show, and we will cover this much later on in this title. But custom show allows us to choose versions of this original slideshow, and you can see I have created one called Executive Short Version. So here I've got 13 slides in my original version. Maybe I've cut it down to 8 or 9 slides for the executives who don't need all of the detail. So here we could choose to show that show as opposed to the original 13 slideshow. I'm going to switch it back to all, and we'll leave it as browsed at kiosk. Now let's look at some of the show options. Because it's being browsed at a kiosk, by default, we've got loop continuously until escape. So this presentation will show continuously until someone hits escape. Obviously, if you hide the keyboard, they won't be able to do that. They'll just be able to look at your information. Another option is to check off show without narration or show without animation. Now, that all depends on your system. If it's not all that powerful, you may want to turn off some of the animations. It slows down the show. And narrations allow you to use a microphone just to narrate as each slide goes by. Now, this can be turned on or off. If you don't have narration, obviously there's no point in turning it on. Same thing with the animation. Pen color is not an option here because we've selected browsed at a kiosk. If we choose presented by a speaker, all of a sudden the pen color is an option, and we can choose different pen colors right from here to set the default color. Now obviously we can change this color at any time, but we're changing the default when we change it from here. So how are we going to advance from one slide to the next? Here's where we choose that. Manually means we're either clicking with our mouse, hitting our space bar, arrow keys, P for previous, N for next, arrow keys, you name it. We can do it manually, or we can use timings. And using timings means each slide has to be given a timing, like how long will that slide show for. For example, if the first slide, which only has a title and a subtitle, only needs about 3 to 5 seconds to be read, we might set up a timing for the first slide at 5 seconds, and then the second one with all those bullets, we may add, 10 to 15 seconds to view that one. Those are called timings. We'll get into that much later, but here's where we select to use those timings or to use a manual advance. You can also set up PowerPoint to display on multiple monitors, and this is handy if you're presenting and you want to be able to see your screen with your slide presentation, making edits on the fly, while showing the presentation on another screen, which could be another monitor, it could be hooked up to a projector on a big screen, whatever it is. As the presenter, you have your own view, and the audience has their own view. Very sneaky, so you can be editing information on the fly without them ever knowing it. Down here we also have a performance section, and we can use hardware graphics acceleration if you have that installed. Here's where you check off to use it. And we can also adjust the slideshow resolution, and we're using the current resolution right now. This drop down shows you some other options for lower all the way up to very high resolution. We'll leave it at current resolution, and we'll click OK. Let's start our presentation now, and there's a number of ways we can begin a slideshow. We've seen already that we can use the view buttons down here, and the third button is the slideshow view. This starts our presentation, but there's a few other ways to do it as well. We can go up to the view menu. And from the view menu, here's slideshow. We can do it from the keyboard. You can see F5 is the key that starts your presentation. We can also go to the slideshow menu and view show. So there it is again with the shortcut key F5. And of course, my favorite way to do it is always the fastest, easiest. I'm going to click on the slideshow button. Now with the presentation running, I'm just moving my mouse around here to display these buttons in the bottom left corner. And these are navigation buttons, pen, and quick menu buttons. So I can move forward through my presentation by clicking these buttons, one item at a time. I can go back, forward. I've got my pens right here. By default, I'm using the arrow or the mouse pointer. The ballpoint pen allows me to illustrate, draw some attention to various objects. The felt tip is the same idea, but a little bit thicker. I've got the highlighter. I'd normally use that on text. Hey, look at this, it's got a copyright. I can change the ink color on my highlighter because that's what's selected, or on my felt tip pen. Let's change the ink color to a light blue. See what happens. Makes more sense for thin ice. And I've got erasers as well. I can erase one item at a time, just by clicking on it. Or I can erase all ink on this slide. And I'm going to switch back to my arrow. And of course this lets me click and move from one slide to the next. You may remember from previous lessons that to stop a slideshow at any time, there's a number of ways of doing it, but the escape key on the keyboard, we saw it earlier when we loop a slideshow, hitting escape allows us to stop the presentation. Same thing here when we are the presenter. So let's hit the escape key on the keyboard. It takes us back to our normal view in Outline, and we are on the slide that we left the presentation at.